Hello, Pam Bondi. She reported that 75,000 Americans are dying every year from fentanyl. Those are war numbers. Now, this is also collusions with the counters to it, though. See, forgiveness is important because there's a breaching method also involved. There are not just criminal foreign influences involved. Increasingly, Connecticut has roles with the World Trade Center attack, has something to do with their roles at and next to all sides of the Wethersfield Community Center, with people involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, including our side's roles as victims of the World Trade Center attack. They were also involved with a whole bunch of different natures of organized crimes, identity theft, fraud, slanders, including with medical families with badges and ones with gavels. I don't know if the Connecticut Judicial branch offices and corrections offices, they have roles with intercities with confessions tied to their roles. I don't know if campuses with untimely deaths, even if they were made up. There are roles with murders, and the FBI director, former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants and their family members and neighbors of his family members. Increasingly, people involved with predicate acts on my streets with Wethersfield police that have been attaching me to identity theft, fraud, slanders. They said there's a Scalora name. They recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with them, switching and forging names. Also with courts. So these are courts that have drugs and medicines, crimes, and tactically delusions raw. Two, psychiatry has roles with American history with replacing what our founders communicated, replacing how they didn't have free speech, framing them for roles with slavery. Our founders, behind James Madison's plan, they forced everyone to fight about that. The North and the South that still had roles with it entrenched because there was still a breaching method entrenched, clearer than day. Who denies that will have a demonstration is the same thing. They get away with it because of the relative. They've been putting predicate acts and facts with the databases we went, the campuses we went to. They're lying about what we think about others in the fake conversations that a Leahy family had with me. These are people involved with all kinds of drugs and medicines crimes at this community center, too, with the people involved with the World Trade Center attack and people I never saw on a campus in my life, trying to make it look like other in databases. Increasingly, people tied to a Christopher Cullen are involved with home break-ins in my area. I don't know if he's involved, but he's involved with various natures of federal evidences crimes and planting fake motivations, evidences and motivations for it. Fake ties, fake natures of ties between kids. People that never even saw each other on a campus in their life. I never had anything to do with Christopher Cullen in my life. They try to make a fake exception. In other words, they're planting evidences, and that's why they won't get on paper with these people. They try to make it look like I knew them. I didn't even have any girls going like that. Like 70, these are increasingly people involved with the Central Connecticut State University with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and with a Joseph Aiello. Also brought up the name Christopher Cullen on Facebook, is one of the people involved with some kids that confessed that they were child abused years ago, and then when they were adults, and there was adults involved with that. Increasingly, people involved with Joe Aiello and his family members. I never saw Joe Aiello on a campus in Wethersfield in my life. They made one exception after he graduated to make a fake exception. There are people that made fake exceptions of knowing me that recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they were influenced to it for their roles with intelligence at next to Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, at next to Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, where and how they have roles also with proven child abusers, leaders of kids, intercities that were first forced, and they have more involved then and now. So these are not people legitimately with the fire departments too. There are multiple probate court judges and superior court judges, and there's a district court judge involved with a whole bunch of people directly and indirectly from other areas involved planting predicate acts roles and acting on all sides of issues. They're making fights between families, making people with the positives where all sides are victims because there's other names involved at the same time with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. The same ones who got in collusion with the syntax with that intercities with the same people next to body dumping spots they have roles with. And they're educators. I don't even know who the name of Ray Collo had in his fifth grade class. Increasingly, he's involved with some Jewish themed intelligence and some religious-themed intelligence at Central Connecticut State University, including atheists, would have exceptions as collusions with them. Criminally born impulse, tactically delusions raw. Readings of the religious books, too, out of sequence if you pay attention. So, in other words, they're putting us in fake conversations, fake ties, fake natures of ties to strangers, as various, all kinds of natures of federal crimes and organized crimes at the same time. The same people supposed to be countering things like drugs. That's also relative to where and how there are all kinds of ways they're recorded with the state corrections offices of Connecticut and names next to it and the differences of the guilt that way, too. Our collusions interstates with the World Trade Center attack. Connecticut had roles with it with a whole bunch of different countries still. Since before America's founders were born, all these countries like Russia and America, from America to Russia to Ukraine, the suburbs look almost exactly alike. And there were homes that were built for the torture, extortion, slavery method that was entrenched. Northern colonies, southern colonies already had forced roles with it, tactically denatured, sustained against differences A through Z. And then Columbus sailed the ocean blue. And then our founders were born, plural, as James Madison. And then they got George Washington to agree to help them and to use that plan, to help them to an extent. No one could help them completely. Otherwise, they would have been sentenced. And that would have been adapted to. Including was a majority of people, including was anyone, any grouping of countries that's still entertaining locations, areas, and state syntax, logic, nature uses. See, these are people that have unnatural impositions. People A through Z of the human species body, of individual bodies, people with differences. Therefore, like Mrs. Bondi, she has hyper unnatural impositions. And it's a system. This is a system, in other words, we have had the experts on emotions using and having valued them used to tactical terror from how nature shows us. Don't leave out the smallest finite detail, or grouped ones or simultaneous ones. And nature shows us too, there's a distinct identity of simultaneous nature that is not our species body of individual bodies. It is not the other species bodies of individual bodies. It is what is generating that and all differences, all group differences. But we see the breaching method employed roles with uses of those differences. That nature is demonstrating to it. Nature is demonstrating to us a scientific value. One of the things true always, that the laws before America's founders were born and as the early states, where they were voting on things that if you're even voting on it, you can't defend the Constitution on a bridge. And why and how we have rights that are too numerous to list. You can't afford to have discerned how our founders declassified how they didn't have free speech. So many people at Hartford Hospital with the Institute of Living and Mental Health have judges and prosecutors personally and professionally involved. With houses near me named people that used to live near me named O'Brien and D. Simone. And others I don't even know the names. In other words, but also there are people named Colal and Smith further involved with Wethersfield Police that have been forging and switching names and making confessions through the years. And as the people involved with the name Scalora evolved interstates and internationally with the World Trade Center attack, and people with the name Mendez have federal evidence as crimes and wire crimes with Saudi attackers, and they forced other Saudis to collusions with them. They have New Britain Superior Court involved with Eric Mendez. Also, his brother, I never had a word of conversation with his brother. He pretended other at Wethersfield Police Department, stealing a sentence I said to my Saudi friend, pretended said to him. And I still haven't gotten a police report. And they have confessions, demonstration, confirmations of their roles with a Bob Chase, with a Phil Collo, also involved with sexual and medical offenders, with the Mendez police family, also on Fox Connecticut News in Hartford, Connecticut, not just the Wethersfield Police Department, in the Britain Superior Court, also involved with rape threats, people with different names, people named KNERR, people with the name KERR, also an officer, Jerry Miller, planting evidences on all sides of my house, and their roles with fire departments and intermilitary. In other words, people are needing to pretend that things are debatable that they know are not, and needing to pretend other because of their roles with the federal agencies and foreign and domestic military, but not going to hide that because when they debate that, it's going to get brought up. That's why they're not getting on paper. Interbranch, they already switched and forged names. They already forced the principal child abuser proven anyway. But they recorded themselves doing more and faking things recorded and changing what's actually recorded and collusions with that. And the difference of the guilt is also used remotely because this breaching method is exploiting differences. That's why it reassigned what nature communicates, roles with what nature communicates, but us having the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time. By us having eyes distinct from the other species' bodies, but also non-distinct from them, and simultaneously with them, but also per that further distinct identity of hyper-simultaneous nature. So the way to counter these problems is not to charge them hard, because the prisons too are still collusions. Ray Clow, John, and a whole bunch of people tied to proven child abusers, leaders of kids, and further at the campuses roles with it. Then and now, there's a Michelle Sandquist too involved with people with a whole bunch of different countries with the same house near me involved with. When she said Lance Cuddy is further one of the ones involved. I never saw Lance Cuddy on the inside of a campus in my life. In other words, the only time I ever saw him in real life was at Park Street. Alina's Pizza is involved with federal evidences crimes, identity thefts, and frauds, with a Daryl Chandler, sequence shift, switching and forging names. There was also a Sullivan woman with a news story regarding a kid that said he was a victim trapped in the house for years by his stepmother. Those people and their syntax are involved with names next to Fox Connecticut News and more sexual and medical offenders of kids, involved with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and medical families, including ones with badges and gavels, including remote uses of the sensibilities of Judge Napolitano recorded with the Facebook pages of Fox Connecticut News, involved with the Facebook pages of New Britain Superior Court and Wethersfield Police with sexual and medical offenders of kids, Harvard Hospital's Facebook page. They have wire and mail crimes. They have how many kinds of things they pretend they're about legitimate medicine. You know how long they've been right through world wars. Germany, America, and Russia had collusions with psychiatry, with the foundations of it, while tactically delusions wrought black peoples. Get them on paper, one name and sequence. They should fear God, using serious things to pretend they can deal with seriousness. Because that's the first thing that they got to do is pretend they don't know what to do. Because that's true. And if they don't do that, they're lying to themselves and others. Next thing they have to do is understand why it says get the Constitution unabridged. Next thing they have to do, just do people A through Z. Difference is A through Z. Overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and terrorists never stopped having time collusions with the interbranch witch trials and slavery rolls, and much worse. How could they can't even get Native Americans' history right first? There was a breaching method against Native Americans, hyperforeign, that also had these impositions, never went away, against everyone's difference, sickly distinctly, to keep us measured and maintained. Syntax tactical terrier from the science by the individual species body of individual bodies, all group differences generated by itself. So rolls with our names and the significance of what we speak, but now through systems tactically abridged from its own, specifically to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. Even though that demonstrates our special difference, as Earth's a special difference, being forced from here. We don't care about it. That's why the species that are not criminally foreign influenced are going extinct. That's why beautiful context of what and the way the water connects to land properly and stuff like that, they went extinct. Even where it didn't, it's landscape theater. Nature shows us how to cause positive or negative value nature progressions, acts, but nature also shows us the difference between criminal insidious natures of peace and peace, criminal insidious natures of truths or uses of truths. And in other words, in facts, there are predicate acts with facts methods. They are refusing to identify themselves interbranch legitimately. Many tied to O'Brien Silver and are involved with medical and sexual offenders of kids with judges and prosecutors, retired and standing. And they have their kids involved, including the medical families, like a Leahy family, including with their roles with social media, changing and faking what's recorded on social media, using all exception nature to hide what's actually recorded. They should get on paper one name in sequence, Miss Bondi. The British Superior Court, Wethersfield Police, they should pick one name in sequence while getting onto paper. I want a response for the rest of the confessions they hid and what I caught them doing worse than they put the principal upskirt nature in jail for, and more FBI then and now involved with it, including former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, involved with his co-defendants, putting predicate acts with facts and databases at the campuses I went, and with the houses next to me involved with the wire crimes of the police, fake conversations with me as a kid, now as an adult, falsified police reports rolls, even fake me being at the police station. And then they pretended that through the news because they had to hide that too. And their roles with the same house, the same ones, were intercities in those spots next to and names next to the news locations with them. Let's get them on paper, one name in sequence. And make sure this Casper family, I never had a class with them, never even saw them around school. They try to make fake exceptions. Same thing with Heather Hansen. I never had a class with her. They tried to make a fake exception with a middle school class with a Mr. Neville, involved all along Route 3 with the intelligence families, foreign and domestic, overt criminal enterprises and private ones. Get these nutbags on paper, one name in sequence. Let's go. I want a response for the principal of child abusers' confessions. I want to show you how I've been attaching the kids to fake to change communications with their family members, etc. I'm going to show you what they're using the investigation to investigate what their worth is. In other words, just to breach that country's A through Z. They need to pretend, they're all sickly, hurt distinctly by the breed hyperforeign too. Now, in other words, that which had sickly, non-distinctly entrenched. Six things like slavery, northern colonies and southern colonies. Again, and then America's founders were born. And then they forced the rest of the founders and presidents with James Madison's plan. James Madison's plan forced the Civil War. You fakes. Get them on paper, one name in sequence. Watch how they get away with pretending others.